So with AMD's Ryzen on the way and Intel's prices likely dropping, here's why I'm not quite ready to jump on the AMD bandwagon just yet. I mean, seriously, it will probably happen, but just pump the brakes a little. First and foremost, guys, this is not a news video. If you are looking for Ryzen news, then you're looking for the video in the card, and that will give you all the up-to-date as of about 5 or 6 days ago or whatever it was. All the up-to-date news on Ryzen processors. This is just sort of my opinion on why I wouldn't quite jump on the bandwagon and set aside your chunk of change for Ryzen just yet. First and foremost, despite all the benchmark leaks and price leaks, Ryzen is still a big unknown for everyone, even the people that are leaking the information out themselves. First off, the price is not yet confirmed by anyone that I am aware of, so even though those leaks look like they're really solid, I wouldn't go so far as to say that you can lock in your $500 1800X from AMD and have the top-of-the-line Ryzen CPU that's going to compete with an $1100 part in the 6950X from Intel. And the reason I say that prices aren't locked in completely is because even though it would be a bit of a PR nightmare for AMD to bump up that price a little bit more than it currently sits, I still know that a lot of people would find the 1800X, if it is actually competing with the $1100 Intel part, even a $700 or even a $750 price point for that part would be an extremely compelling decision to make for possible consumers, especially those of the enthusiast class, even though it would be disappointing for most fans of AMD and even people that are just consumers and looking for a great processor to see the 1800X sell at $700 or $750. Let's keep this in mind. Scarcity will likely drive up the price point of these processors unless AMD has done a terrific job figuring out just how many of them they need to produce and get on the market at the $500 price point. If they can pull that off, then color me impressed, because frankly, Nvidia failed at it miserably last year when they had their Pascal cards coming out, and also AMD didn't do such a hot job at all either with their RX 480s when they first launched, selling it much higher than the MSRP. So if that happens with Ryzen, even though technically the 1800X was supposed to have been at $500, it just frankly won't be available for a while at that price point. The other side to this pricing is that AMD could always just decide to bump up the prices $100, seeing as a $600 price point for the 1800X wouldn't really disappoint me that much, and if it is actually giving us 6950X type performance, that bump in price probably isn't going to deter people that are willing to spend big money on CPUs from buying that part in lieu of the Intel part anyways. So I feel like AMD actually has a little bit of price wiggle room with where they actually launch these parts, especially because we haven't heard any official pricing from them, and maybe all that was just so they could sort of feel out the market a little bit and figure out where they actually want to put the prices. Now, I'm not going to throw in motherboards onto this list because motherboard parity is going to be really close between the AMD parts and the Intel parts anyways, so, and price points will be very similar too. I expect the AMD boards or the AMD equivalents of the features that you can find versus the Intel boards to be a little bit cheaper. That's normally been the case, but motherboards will probably be very similar across the board. Usually companies that make motherboards for both will come out with similar series motherboards that are very similar and offer very similar features at, again, and I'm saying very a lot, but at very similar price points as well. But the last and possibly the biggest reason I'm not ready to jump all in on Ryzen, beyond not knowing benchmarks and beyond not being 100% sure on price, is the company behind the processors is still the same old AMD that we know and love or hate depending on who you ask. But AMD has not really been able to deliver on its promises in the past, especially over the past decade, and especially even more on the CPU side of things. One of the big draws of the AM4 platform is that it is anticipated to be supported for several years, whereas Intel's platforms typically last a couple years, but then they move on to a completely different socket, and then there's no more upgrade path for those motherboards. The nice thing about AM4 is if it is actually supported, as long as it says, as AMD says it will be supported, then you'll actually have a processor upgrade path in the future as well. The problem with that is we don't actually know that AMD is going to exist 3 years from now when they say they'll be moving roughly on to the next probably AM5 platform once DDR5 actually comes out. So we don't actually know that AMD can follow through on the promise to keep supporting AM4 that long, because it's completely possible that the company won't even exist. And as a consumer, I always believe that it is smart if you can hold yourself back from pre-ordering anything or buying things on launch day to do so, because we will be seeing a lot of reviews and performance reviews, benchmarks, and that sort of thing coming out as AMD's Ryzen processors launch, and it's at that point that we'll actually be able to give an accurate conception for where AMD's processors stack up in the market. And once you have all that information as a consumer, that's when you can actually make the decision, weigh your options, and figure out if taking a little bit of a gamble on AMD being around in 3 years is worth your dollars as a consumer. And frankly, if benchmarks for me stack up like I expect them to and like the leaks have shown, then yes, AMD, I probably will be joining Team Red once again. As always, guys, if you like this content, give me a like down below. Also, share, subscribe. All those things help out a lot. Comment down below because I love to have conversations down there with everybody that's watching these videos. You can also follow me on social media at Hoosier Hardware on both Twitter and Instagram, especially Instagram if you like to see some of the pictures that I take while I'm doing some of this YouTube work or just playing around with technology and that sort of thing. But that's it for me, so I'm going to let YouTube queue up some sort of card here with a video for you guys to watch, and I'm going to get on out of here. I'm Shane from Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.